So for servicing your rough cut HLR or RCP cartridge, you're going to need the following tools: the appropriate seal kit, some alcohol, slick honey, a large torque wrench capable of 200 inch-pounds, a small torque wrench capable of going down to 60 inch-pounds, an 18 millimeter open end wrench, 10 millimeter open end wrench, snap ring pliers, 12 millimeter socket, 14 millimeter socket, hand ratchet, your bladder service kit, which includes your bleed syringe, your high-speed knob holding tool, your bladder shaft clamp set, high-speed knob removal tool, your bladder body holding tool, a set of 10 millimeter shaft clamps, a rebound removal tool, a 1.5, 2, and 3 millimeter Allen key, set of needle nose pliers, an S-shaped pick, a bronze pick, top cap removal socket 28 millimeter, soft blow hammer, and your Torco RFF 10 weight damper fluid. Once you have all your tools, we're ready to pull the RCP damper from the fork. So we're going to start with a 2 millimeter, and we're going to loosen our low speed adjuster and remove. We're going to grab our high speed knob removal tool and our high speed knob holder. Turn the adjuster to the mid platform position. Loosen and remove your knob. Go ahead and remove your knob. Let's go ahead and grab your top cap removal tool. Go ahead and unthread the top of the damper. Again, this is going to be super difficult to break free as there is nylock on the top cap. You can see the nylock here. Grab your 2 millimeter Allen key. Turn your fork up so that it's horizontal and level. Go ahead and remove your rebound adjuster. Use your 11 millimeter socket to loosen your foot nut. Grab your damper removal tool and your soft blow hammer. Thread this on until it contacts the lowers, then back it off 1.5 to 2 turns. And give it a slight tap just to unseat the last little bit. From there, grab your rag, and you can pull the damper from the top of the fork. Go ahead and wipe the damper off. We'll grab our snap ring pliers. Pull the snap ring for the low speed adjuster. Set aside. Grab your needle nose. Remove your low speed adjuster key. Move the platform back to the open position. Pump the damper empty into a waste container bin. Once your damper is emptied, go ahead and spray your top cap with alcohol. Shake it around a little bit. Dump it into your waste bin. Give the damper a slight tap, and your platform gear ring should fall off at that point. From there, we're going to grab our body bias clamps. Using the smooth side of the clamp, we're going to place the damper in the vise. Our top cap tool. Loosen the top cap a couple of turns. Grab your body tool. Loosen the body. There is Loctite on these threads. If you don't get it to break free right away, Use a heat gun just to warm this up a little bit, and that will soften the Loctite and make it easier to remove. Go ahead and unthread this guy all the way. From here, we're going to use snap ring pliers to remove platform snap ring. And then work this plastic protector ring out. And then pull your platform assembly out on the bottom of the damper. We're going to remove the body seal O-ring. And the main piston. From here, we should be able to separate the compression assembly. Remove your top cap. Pull your bladder material down to expose this shelf. That shelf will nest into the groove in this side of the shaft clamp. Make sure your bladder material is high enough that it's not being pinched in the shaft clamp. And go ahead and unthread the lower seal head. Go ahead and remove your old bladder rubber. Get the bladder rubber re-extended. Set your compression tube aside. We're going to go back to our body vise blocks using the smooth side. Remove your rebound side seal head. And your damper tube. Now we'll go ahead and clean the upper compression tube inside and outside with alcohol. Rinse your damper tube out with alcohol. Now we can start disassembling the rebound unit. Use your 10mm shaft clamps. Go ahead and grab your 10mm wrench. At this point, you can inspect the glide ring. And if it's damaged or excessively loose, you can replace it at this point. But you want to loosen the piston stud from the shaft. Don't loosen the piston nut. Keep this a whole assembly, that way you don't get things mixed up. Set your rebound unit aside. Pull your seal head off. Now you can go ahead and use your rebound adjuster on the bottom. And we're going to turn this counterclockwise to extend the rebound adjuster shaft until we can grab it with our fingers and remove. From here, we're going to flip the assembly. Using a 14mm wrench, we're going to remove the adjuster assembly. We're going to change the two O-rings on this guy. We've got one here and one here. On your detent assembly, you're going to have these two circlips that hold everything in place. So being careful not to lose your detent spring and ball. Go ahead and work the first one off. It looks like that one captured one of our springs. So you have one spring, one circlip. Go ahead and remove your second circlip. We have our second spring, second circlip. Give each side a tap to remove your 2 detent balls. Then you're going to use your snap ring pliers. Put the adjuster down on the table. And you're going to spread this little clip slightly while you push it down to remove it. Once your little clip is off, you can then push the adjuster out the bottom, and we can remove this O-ring for a change. All right, go ahead and empty your seal kit. First thing you're going to check, make sure your bladder material is the same size. We're going to spray our compression tube with alcohol. And we're going to work the bladder onto the compression tube until it's centered top to bottom. We're going to let that sit and dry. All right, so we're going to start from our rebound adjuster up. We're going to replace our small O-ring here first. Gently walk it down into place. Put a little dab of grease on here. Reinsert it back in. Make sure that you're putting the adjuster side on the foot nut side, not the damper side. The damper side is narrower than the foot nut side. It's the bottom of the fork, it's the inside of the fork. We're going to take our little clip, squeeze it into place, make sure it spins freely, and you can't get it to move up or down. We're going to then place 1 detent ball and 1 spring. Hold it in place with a little dab of grease. Roll it over. Place the second detent ball and detent spring. With your first detent spring, you have a hook on it. You want that hook to hold into the center of the spring, to hold the spring in place. From there, walk it around the adjuster housing, and it should pop right on top of the opposite spring. Take your second clip, make sure the hook on this one is going into the second spring, and then walk it into place around the housing. You can then check, make sure you have good positive detents. If you don't, start over. Now we'll go ahead and replace the inner shaft seal, our outer lowers seal, go ahead and reinstall onto your damper shaft, and then we're going to flip it in the vise one last time. We're then going to replace the O-ring on this rebound rod. Lock it into place. We're going to hand thread it in, feeling for when it engages the adjuster. Then using our knob, go ahead and turn it fully counterclockwise. And then come back about 3 clicks. That'll make sure that when we go to torque the adjuster housing to the shaft, that we don't bind the adjuster together. Now we'll go ahead and move on to our seal head. Pull the outer seal. Using our snap ring pliers, we're going to remove the snap ring holding the U-cup in place. Pry your U-cup out. Go ahead and rinse this with some alcohol and wipe it clean. Grab your new U-cup. Get a little bit of oil or grease on it. Push it down into place. And then on your snap ring, you're going to have a hard shoulder and a soft shoulder. You want the hard shoulder facing you. So put the back side in first. And then once it's seated, give it a slight squeeze and spin it to make sure it's all the way in the groove. Go ahead and replace your outer seal. A little bit of slick honey. And then we're going to work this onto the damper shaft. It should just work right on nice and easy. From there, we'll go ahead and replace the inner shaft seal on our piston stud. And again, if your glide ring is worn, you would change it. Okay. The piston nut to piston stud is 60 inch-pounds. Piston stud to shaft is 60 inch-pounds. And rebound adjuster housing to shaft is 60 inch-pounds. So we're going to remove this from the vise. We're going to clamp the 2 flat sides into the vise using our 12mm socket. Set your torque wrench to 60 inch-pounds. Holding here, we're going to be able to torque the whole assembly in line because the nut, the piston nut to the stud, the piston stud to the shaft, and the shaft to the adjuster housing are all the same torque. So we're going to hold here and apply torque to the top, which will torque everything in line. We'll go ahead and thread our damper shaft on by hand. Just make sure that's hand tight. Now we're going to move back to our compression assembly. On the RCP, the assembly does not matter too much, but I like to make sure that the waist is down like on the HLR cartridge. So we're going to put a little bit of grease around the top and the bottom. We're going to pinch the bladder against the tube while we thread the top cap in place. Do the same thing on the bottom. Pinch the bladder against the tube. Thread the lower seal head on. Just give that a little hand tighten. Then we'll go ahead and change our 2 seals here. This lower seal retains the pin for this adjuster assembly. So we want to be careful that as we remove this seal, we don't lose that pin. And here's our pinhole right there. So we're going to keep that pinhole up. Place our new O-ring. All right, once that O-ring is changed, we can then move on to the main seal. We're going to change our piston seal, give it a little squeeze. And then we're going to swap out our body seal. We're going to change the seal for our low speed adjuster key. We're going to wipe the inside of the top cap out a little bit. Place our adjuster in. Snap it in place. Grab our plastic protector. And again, with our snap ring, we're going to have a hard shoulder and a soft shoulder. Make sure the hard shoulder is facing you. Okay. Then on the bottom, we're going to install our assembly. You'll note the piston stud is hex shaped here, and the inside of our adjuster shaft is hex shaped. Those have to key together. So when we're installing this, we're going to drop it in. We're going to feel for it and then snap it in place. Go ahead and install our new body seal. And thread our damper back together. Now on this damper, the top cap torques to the compression tube at 80 inch-pounds. Compression tube to lower head at 80 inch-pounds. Seal head to body at 80 inch-pounds. And body to rebound seal head at 80 inch-pounds. So we're going to torque the whole assembly in line again. We're going to mount the rebound unit in the vise. Making sure to grab the two flats. Grab our top cap socket, set the torque wrench to 80 inch-pounds. And now our damper is roughly assembled. From here, you can move to the hand vacuuming procedure, but we're going to do this one on the vacuum machine. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure your platform adjuster is all the way in the open position. And using your 3mm, make sure your low speed adjustment is in the open position all the way counterclockwise, and then we'll move to the vacuum machine. All right, once you're connected to the vacuum machine, you're going to want to use some sort of tube. This is an old 32mm stanchion I pulled from a fork. This makes sure that when we run our pressure cycle, our bladder material does not overexpand and either rip or pop out. So slide our tube up. Go ahead and run a vacuum cycle. Slowly introduce a pressure cycle. Make sure your damper fully extends. You can hand cycle it a couple of times at this point. Run another vacuum cycle. You can see we got no more bubbles coming out of the damper. Do one last fill. Release pressure. Disconnect from the machine. Now we'll go back over to our vise and finish putting together. That's a final check before you remove your bleed fitting. Cover it with your thumb. Give the damper a couple of cycles. And that'll remove the last little tiny air pocket from underneath the bleed fitting. Okay, we got a good column of oil all the way to the top. Go ahead and insert our low speed key. Push it all the way into place. Rinse the top cap with alcohol. Your low speed snap ring, again, you're feeling for the hard shoulder and the soft shoulder. Hard shoulder faces you. Give it a push, make sure it's all the way seated. With your thumb pressing on the low speed key, cycle the damper. If your low speed key snap ring is not seated, you'll feel the key push up against your thumb. If that's the case, reseat your snap ring. This one feels fine. Invert your damper. Cycle it a couple of times. And on extension, you want to feel for a bubble. If you feel a bubble on extension, you need to re-bleed it. This one's got no bubble. Last step, we'll replace our outer top cap seal. And we're ready to go back into the fork. Once we're ready to go into the fork, we're going to grab our 14mm socket. So there's our platform click. And now we're locked out. Make sure this is fully extended. Use your damper removal and install tool to tighten the damper into place. That should hold it far enough to let you use your foot nut to torque it in. This foot nut torques to 60 inch-pounds. Okay. Go ahead and reinstall your rebound adjuster. Go to the top of the fork. Using your 14mm socket, take the damper off of the platform setting by turning the damper counterclockwise. And we're going to torque our top cap to 200 inch-pounds. Then we're going to take our 14mm socket again. We're going to move it clockwise until we feel it stop. Verify that you have platform. Take your toothed gear ring. Make sure the tooth side is facing up. That will key on to the platform adjuster. To clock your platform adjuster knob, you need to make sure you're in the platform position. Put the lever facing directly back at 6 o'clock. This lever will then torque to 60 inch-pounds. Make sure you're using your damper holder tool. We have open position, platform position, and fully closed. Go ahead and reinstall your low speed adjuster. All right, once you got that tight, you can reset your blow off low speed adjustment and your rebound adjustment to where they were before you started, and you're all done.